depends on where you're at.
That's exactly right. Here we are in Atlanta, and it's 2 p.m. 2:01 p.m. and welcome to Duzie Live.
Begin.
Woo! Welcome in. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us live.
If you're coming in, please just type in the chat where you're coming from. We want to know where you're at. We know where we're at. We're in our living room. But where are you at?
I'm curious to see who's going to be first in the chat space. Who's going to make it? We've got some people in the chat.
We know there's people in the house. We see the numbers.
Some of you don't love to be in the chat, and that's completely okay. But who will be the first to say, hey, it's me. I'm here, and I'm coming live from where?
Do they have to say, hey? How do you type? Hey.
Well, exactly like that.
That's hey. Like, oh, here they come.
Taylor's first in. Bravo. Coming from my bedroom in the UK. Matt, wow. Hero status
They're
to you.
Flowing now.
Matt, you came to this morning's Duzie Live.
Did he?
Yeah, I think he was.
I don't remember him in there. Matt, were you in this morning?
Please confirm, but
Are you going to class twice?
I don't know. Maybe not.
I don't think so.
Michaela is coming in from Portugal. Welcome in. Cyril from Germany. Michaela.
Welcome home.
Matt beat me. She was trying to be quick on the draw. Well, Michaela, next time. Good try.
You got to have everything typed in. When you push enter, you just let it go.
Evelyn, you're welcome. Welcome in from Texas, and you got a new bedroom color. I love your new paint job.
You like the haircut?
All right.
Look at this.
It's being transformed. To be honest, I was trying to ash blonde it, but the red is so permanent.
It's changing every day.
Yeah, we got to be out in the sun. Thank you, Matt. Matthias coming in from Germany again. Thank you. Yes, welcome. Nice to have you from the Netherlands. And Michaela, see, that's how you write hey. Michaela's got it.
Why?
Hey, thank you, Michaela.
Hey, he, why?
Hey, yo. Yeah. And Matt, no, last week you was, so not today. I just felt like you were here with us, Matt. That's okay. Also, Laura and Tiffany, welcome in. They're in the big screen. Oh, big screen in the living room. Whoop, whoop. I love when you guys have a party and you're having your own private conversations in the midst. It makes it so good. And Laura, welcome in from Switzerland. We missed you last week. Glad to have you this week. Matt says, Michaela, you didn't even make the podium this time. Michaela and Sarah, I'll beat you.
Good.
Woo! Slam dunk right there.
First place, second place, third place, Michaela.
Oh, no, she's probably off on an adventure.
On an adventure.
Yeah, she might be way off on an adventure, which
Kayaking.
is awesome. Which is awesome. Do it.
We are so excited about this topic of boundaries. I was just out walking with my dog, and we're walking out. Like if you go outside my door here, there's a yard, and then there's a row of trees, a lot of trees, like a little strip of forest, and then there's a road. And people that go by don't really see our house because of all these trees that are there. Those trees are a boundary line.
We like it that way.
Now, if someone drives and they park next to that's no big deal. But if someone gets out of their car and starts walking through the trees towards my house, that's going to be a little strange. If this comes
through, it doesn't usually happen.
A boundary that it's not there. If they want to come to my place, they have to go down to my driveway and then come in there. But when they come in there, they got a couple options. They can either come to my front door and stop at that boundary, or they can go the other way and hop over my fence. If they hop over my fence, they've invaded my space.
Yeah, because there's a boundary there.
In life, there's a lot of boundaries, and we have them for ourselves as well. And we want to look at that. What are those boundaries that are really important and necessary in our relationships, and how do we establish what's good and what's not?
Yeah, so just want to put a question out here, and it's what makes boundaries important to you?
To me?
To you in the chat.
To you.
Yeah, we'd love for you to put in the chat. What makes boundaries important to you? What is intriguing to you that you would even show up at Duzie Live today in our session about boundaries?
What was the bait that got you today?
Meanwhile, hello, Tammy from West Africa. Thanks for joining us. Oh, Laura said, since losing the paddle in the middle of the lake, I think it's only called a board now. What? You lost a paddle?
You can wait for the surf to come and just sort of
Oh, sorry
Sure
about
thing.
that. Well, was it worth this? Was it worth the Sunday adventure?
I thought paddles were supposed to float. I didn't know paddles sunk.
Maybe they couldn't get out there and catch it. I don't know.
Wow.
Wild waters. Yeah. Do you know that your life is a remarkable story, an adventure that only you can create?
We exist to motivate and equip you to live fully alive.
Today in this Duzie Live, we're talking about relationship boundaries, and it's part of our series, Unique Relationships. So we're so glad that you came.
So we've talked about adult living with parents. We've talked about boy meets girl and girl meets boy, and people keep saying, what about the boundaries? So today and probably next week, we're going to be looking at boundaries.
Yeah, Rahel, welcome in from Germany. So just to get us kicked off, I have some far out.
And I have some music.
I've got some far out. Now remember, we've got a hashtag. Show your hashtag. Yeah. Hashtag. So our hashtag is far out, and it stands for Fully Alive Revolution. And we're getting it out there. So here's a few quotes from last week, Girl Meets Boy. Jonathan says, I feel like guys still oftentimes want to start relationships, but they're afraid to offend the girl. I do not want to come across as one of those guys that are just after a physical relationship.
Good word, Jonathan.
David says, so it's about communication and understanding, and a lot about what's not being said.
What's not being said.
That was a tongue twister. And Megan said, communication. It's clearly the key.
Can you repeat that one?
It's clearly the key.
The key.
And Rob says, and realizing my communication isn't another person, so we have to learn that and practice together. And Ellie says, I think it's important to realize on the receiving end of rejection will only lead to hard relationship too. So she's saying, true. Realize it. And Roseanne said, I definitely feel more safe and understood when someone takes time to hear how I feel about something.
Wow, thanks for all these comments.
And Alice says, it's super vulnerable to share feelings, so it means a lot when someone can listen without reacting. It is so good to be asked questions. And David said, but the thing is, after that, we have to follow up with genuine, deep, active listening, right? So these were a bunch of comments that were going on.
There's a bunch. Did you put them all up?
Not all of them. There was so many
goodness.
other good ones. The chat was humming last week. And Matt said, a good question shows that someone has been truly listening. And Alice says, my takeaway, and just a heads up, before you leave the Duzie Live, if you have to leave any time in the midst of it, we don't mind. If you have to go, do a takeaway. Tell them what a takeaway is.
Takeaway is simply, what do you want to remember from this time? What do you want to walk away with? There's so much stuff that you're going to forget. Great, forget it. But what's the nugget you want to walk away with? So
last week, here are some of the takeaways. Alice said, mine is that men really like to be needed. How is that hitting you guys? Is that true? And Roseanne said, guys take their emotions underground. Never really realized that. Yep. And then Megan said, don't shake up guys too much. They may explode.
Reach it.
That was a funny moment. Lynn said, my takeaway, boxes are to be thrown away. Guys expect different things and how their minds work as being very insightful for me, and living fully alive in who I am and in God is the goal. Amen, sister. Mattia said, I like the phrase that Dan said, something like the greatest thing you can study is yourself. So know yourself. And Jessica, this final takeaway here, takeaway reminder, communication is key. Try to be open and get there sooner rather than taking the confusing route to get there much later.
I have to tell you, I did not see those before. Those are incredible takeaways.
You said it.
I actually said to Susie, let's get 3 up there. And I know there's going to be a whole book of them, but wow,
there's so good.
A lot of great stuff that we're all taking away. And I love the fact that they're different things than each other.
Yep. So, Elaine is coming in from Wisconsin. Welcome in, Elaine. That's great. And Matt said, so there was something wrong with the
connection.
Yeah, the broadcast stopped. So thank you, Matt. Good. You must have had that happen.
Matt, we're going to double your pay.
Yeah, that's great. So Any questions, comments, emotional outbursts? I'm not sure if I saw any that told us what makes boundaries important to you. Did I miss that? Let's see.
They were so busy with all the quotes.
The paddles, yeah. And then Lara said, so sad I was not part of it last week. You can go on YouTube and watch it. Duzie Space Potter YouTube. You can watch. There's 2 versions. They're both amazing. Matt says, one of the things about boundaries is that they can help create a bit of safe personal space. That's a good reason for boundaries. All right.
Good.
Great. Okay, so I guess that's all we're responding to so far.
We have a lot to cover. We're going to look at 3 areas. We're going to look at how boundaries affect God and us, our own emotional intelligence, and then we're going to try to really focus the most of our time on others.
Yeah. So Matt says last week was popping. Whoop, whoop. You are right, Matt. That's a great way. I love the way you describe things. And we want to encourage you to take in what we're saying, but really so much of the win happens when you guys chat about it, respond to it, emotional outburst about it, ask your questions, and we love that. Oh, is it time for a poll?
I have a poll first.
All right, we got a poll. Let's see. Oh, let's start with this poll right here. Are you ready? Here it is. Are you in a relationship now that requires clear boundaries? You can say yes, or you could say no. So
we're at 100% yes.
So
this is the time you can make it to the podium first.
Well, somebody already did because we've got.
Okay, second.
This is completely anonymous.
Maybe they need some music.
Yeah, this is completely anonymous, so we don't mind what you say, and you don't have to wonder who's going to think what. So
77% yes and 22% no.
Okay, so are you in a relationship now that requires clear boundaries? That's what you said. We just switched up to 80%
and 20%.
Okay, and this morning it was 88 and 11% is how it rolled out.
72 and those are opposites. 72, 27.
Oh, that's nice for a dyslexic man. How's that working out for you?
Made the connection right there.
I wouldn't have seen that at all. That's awesome. Okay, so relationship boundaries. Tell what we're talking about when we're talking about relationship boundaries.
Well, we're talking about in every relationship, you need to know where you can go with that relationship. What, whether through culture or through family or whatever, what are the walls that you need to be careful? I mean, some cultures very close space, some farther space.
Physical space.
There are walls that are invisible, some are visible. We want to look at those things.
Yep. And we're mainly talking about guy-girl relationships as a follow-up from the last 2 weeks. But what we're talking about very much applies to parents and children and bosses and people who are working as well. And so we want to ask you one more poll. And this poll, thank you, is where have you learned most of your boundaries? Many of us learn our boundaries from somewhere. Have you learned your boundaries from family and culture?
Oop, they're jumping
Experiences from yourself and others. You learned it really on your own or experientially. Friends and mentors, church and the Bible, or other. Maybe we didn't have the right category
those
for
other
you.
Boundaries.
Those other boundary learning
right
spaces.
Now, family and culture and experiences are tied at 40%, and friends and mentors are. Oh, we just switched to 16%.
Okay, we're gonna give people more time.
Family and culture is growing. Oh,
it's going back. It's almost equal. Family, culture, experiences. Friends and mentors has come out in the lead over the experiences.
This is like a heartbeat on the side.
I know, it's like doom, doom, doom.
Right now, family and culture is leading at 41%.
And 0 at other and 0 church and Bible.
Oh, good.
Very interesting. Okay, so this is what you said. This is your percentage. 41, 25, 33.
And isn't that interesting? I bet most of us have never stopped to think about where our boundaries come from. But we're looking here, and actually it's grown again. Family and culture is definitely taking the lead. That's where our boundaries for many of you are coming from, but several of you are saying it's from experiences or friends and mentors.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking that poll. It just gives us a feel for how, who's in the room and what's going on with you guys. Yeah, so here we go with our boundaries. And we want to start by talking about our relationship boundaries. You heard the story from Dan's perspective. Then you heard the story from my perspective. And now we want to just carry on our story from our perspective.
I'll just say one of the boundaries that I had was I wasn't going to kiss Susie until we were engaged to be married. Because to me, a kiss was something very, very special. I am not saying everyone has to do that. That was just a boundary that I had. And she thought I was really weird that I'd never kissed her. But I didn't want to kiss her until I knew that this relationship was going farther.
And I was like, what's the matter?
Takes you to different places.
Yeah, my boundary was, I come from a family that's very physical. One of my love languages, and most of the people in my family have love language, and Tammy's here, my sister. We have touch as a love language. We're very touchy. We communicate love in that way. And so for us to be growing in our relationship and him not touch me was super weird. Like, what's the matter with me? Or really more like, what's the matter with you?
He didn't touch me. No, he didn't touch me. Anyway.
So yeah, speaking of boundaries, some of you guys have put some more comments there. And thank you for that. Lara said, to get to know myself better. And Elaine said, boundaries require internal and external communication, which can be a challenge sometimes, but it's a good thing. Amen, sister. Michaela says, I always think boundaries are like a parent telling their kid to stay in a playground and not run out on the street. There's a boundary to keep them safe, but there's still plenty to enjoy within the boundary. That's right. Ooh, that's a good one. So Matt wants more explanation from Lara. Let's see if we get that. Rahel says, I was so much more like the boy at Boy Meets Girl. So I found that Girl Meets Boy might not help me that much. So I wasn't there too. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Good.
And Elaine says, boundaries for ourselves and or why they're important or necessary for the individual. Discussing the boundary with ourselves first, if that makes sense. Yes, it does. Matt says, I think it's hard to overstate the impact that our family and culture has on us, especially with something like boundaries, which often is an unspoken thing. And I think, thank you, Matt, for saying that, because in saying that, we think, oh, these are normal boundaries. But when we get in community, like we're doing here at Duzie Live and in our gatherings of our people, and we share our stories together, we see that we all have unique perspectives because we come from families and experiences and events that shape us.
I always found it was very interesting.
So true.
Very interesting in the ship, knowing different culture boundaries, and then just watching, especially in the first few weeks and months, people just ripping down each other's fences because they didn't even realize in that culture that's a boundary, but I'm running through it because it's not. And so we need to be very aware of these things and respect other people. Physically,
emotionally, mentally, socially. That's right. Michaela says, I'm curious if you can talk about boundaries without talking about respect. We're going to get to that in the third part. So thank you for bringing that up. You're just baiting us a little bit. Yeah. Let's see. Doesn't Dan still have that hat? Lynn is asking if you have that hat.
I don't think I have that hat anymore. The hats of those days don't fit me today because I don't have the hair. So those ones went, but I have one exactly like it.
Yes, thank you, Lynn. Good notice. Yep. Good notice. And that, by the way, was a picture of us very shortly after our engagement. So look at us.
And what you don't realize in that picture is my hat is accidentally on backwards. But I liked it so well that for years after that, I always wore my hair backwards.
Because of that picture. That's so true. I forgot. Yeah. That was the starting point of that. That's awesome. Okay. So let's
move on.
Yeah. So here we go. We want to talk about, and let's chat about all these sections today. But you can have excellent relationship boundaries. And we want to have an experience to get us started.
So if you would, just take out a piece of paper and a pen. That's all you need. It's a quick experience, but take out a piece of paper and pen. If you have to run to the other room, then do that. But you need a paper and pen. You can't do this on your phone. You maybe in a sandbox. You can do it in a sandbox. but you're going to need to have something to write with. All right.
Oh, some people can do it on the phone. Some people have
If
those
you have
apps.
an Etch-a-Sketch, maybe you can do it there as well. But what I want you to do at the very top is I want you to draw a bit of a squiggly line. It's the horizon point. So draw a little bit of the horizon there off in the distance. Yes. You got it? Okay. So you got the horizon in the distance. And now I want you to draw a line. And not a straight line. This is a path. So once you start in the distance, go over here, come over. Now you don't go not back and forth. This isn't a heartbeat. It's just sort of you're creating a path all the way down to the bottom. We're going step by step here. You got it? Okay, now we're going to add on to it a bottom second. It's the edge. It's the boundary of the path. Just go up and then go back down. So you're creating the first part of the path, but it sort of goes off. So that's the 1, 2. That's the third line. We're going to the fourth line now. Fourth line. Can you give me a fourth line? Fourth line is you come in from the side. You sort of make a sharp, like M&M, and then back up, go McDonald Golden Arches, and you come up. And as it gets farther away, they get closer and closer together. You've just made a path off into the horizon. Can you see that? All right. So you've got a path that's going to the sunrise or sunset, whichever you like better. Draw a little sun on that edge.
Meanwhile, I'm just curious, do you like sunrises or sunsets better if you could have a choice?
I would love sunrises better if they came later in the day. But anyway, so you got the sun there. And what I want you to do is to put an X right in the spot where the path sort of divides. You could be going up towards the sun, or you can be taking this little detour. Put an X there because that's where you are. This isn't a treasure map. You don't start digging for gold there. That's where you are. Okay? So now at the far end on the sun, I want you to write dreams. That is your dream. That is your goal. That's what's moving you forward in this relationship. For some of you, it may be marriage. For some of you, it may be that you want to form a business together. I have no idea what that is, but there's a dream out there above the sun. Write that in there. And then all the way to the beginning where we started, right past. Everybody has a past. We're not going back, but we realize the past affects our future. And we have to have the past, but then there's another couple words we need to write. We need to write on the exit, the one on the downside, exits. These are when we leave the path, we get outside the boundaries, we move to a place that is not within line with our dreams or values. But then if you go up a little higher, you see choices. We've made choices to stay within some boundaries and move closer to the dream. Everybody got that? Because when we follow this path, there's color, there's light, there's life. And so we want to be thinking as we talk today about what are the choices I need to make to move me forward. We don't want to just go back and live in the past. Lots of people just live in the past. That's not where the sun is rising or setting. It's forward motion. And there's a lot of regrets because some of us have taken exits. We've gone to places we shouldn't go. The great thing is there's an invitation to come back and now start moving forward. And that's what we're looking at today. Keep that in your mind as we move forward. Even maybe make some notes along the edge.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Dan, for setting us up for this. And this is a picture that we're going to use as we think about our relationship and our relationship boundaries. Many of us have had a relationship in the past, guy, girls, or our cultural experiences of our past bring us to where we are. And many times we can take exits off of the place where we are fully alive and where God really wants us to be. That's the fully alive life. So those dreams, Lynn says she likes those dreams represent sunrises. Elaine, sunsets. Kat says sunsets. Michaela, sunsets. Laura says sunrise. Jess says sunrise. And Matt says, yes, both. I agree with Dan. There's something magical about the new day dawning, but often it had dawned before I have.
Yep.
And yes, so welcome in, Jess. Welcome in, Kat. We didn't see you earlier, but
I would
we're glad
definitely
you're
say
here.
for me, it would be sunsets because for me, for the sun to go down and everything get dark and then the stars come out, it's just magical.
Yeah, and Tammy says sunrises as well. So you can have excellent relationship boundaries, like getting to that goal of that sunrise, sunset, whichever picture you have, that fully alive life, by living under control and out of control.
So the under control is under the control of God. We are under his control. We choose to put ourselves in that place. And the out of control is out of control of this world. That no one else is telling us what are the boundaries that we should have. We're out of control of the world boundaries, but we're listening closely. What is God saying about the boundaries that I need in this relationship?
So you can have excellent boundaries in your relationships by focusing in 3 directions. The first is up. Be pleasing to God. And a passage that we're going to look at throughout today is 1 Thessalonians 4. And it talks about living in order to please God. And I love the part in the middle that says, as in fact you're doing. Keep doing it. You're living in order to please God. So keep doing that. That's awesome.
It's not a guilty passage. It's not shame on you. You're doing it.
You're doing it. Well done. And Romans 12 encourages us to live our lives as a living and holy sacrifice.
Don't copy the behaviors or customs of the world. Don't do that.
Be out of the control of those customs, but learn to know what God's will for you, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. So in that upward perspective, then we can be pleasing to God.
And everything centers around your values and your rhythms. I need to be on a diet. I'm tried to lose weight and then I gained it. I keep finding it. I'm really good at hide and seek. But if I have a value, of losing weight, that's really important. But I have to have the rhythms that support that. A value without rhythms goes nowhere. And so when we have these boundaries in place, we need to know what is the value. Too often, I think churches and even in families, they talk about behavior. Change your behavior. Well, you really can't change a behavior unless you change a value. And the value doesn't go very far unless you have a rhythm to support that. So in everything we're talking about, think about what's the value here, and then what's the rhythm to support and give that momentum.
Thanks, Dan. And another way to say that is your belief and your actions. So what do you value in your beliefs, and what are the actions or the consistent, regular, intentional rhythms that are chosen to help you be pleasing to God? Would love if you put in the chat, what are some of those values and rhythms that help give you a foundation even before you get into a relationship space? For me, I have a value and a foundation of knowing God and being in the Word of God. And so part of my morning, sometimes it ends up being an evening rhythm, is to have my journaling time. This is my time with God, and I write it down because I value what God says. So every day I take a portion of scripture, I process it together with my day, and I value the perspective of God. I don't just want to do what feels right or somebody else tells me is right. I really want to be biblically based. So I value that, and my rhythm, my actions look like time with God every day.
So when I was first dating Duzie, again, I didn't kiss her until we were engaged. And part of that was the value, because I realized she doesn't belong to me. Matter of fact, she might be someone else's wife because we're not married yet. Someday. Yeah. And so do I want to be kissing someone else's wife? So it was a value of mine. And so the rhythms were, hey, let's go for a walk. And, so it was, I set up some rhythms that it's like, I just can't go there yet. So it was just for me, value, rhythm.
Yep. So yeah, as you guys are writing your rhythms and your values there, we're going to carry on. So you can have excellent boundaries in your relationships by focusing in 3 directions. The first is up, be pleasing to God. The second is be self-controlled. So with that foundation of being pleasing to God, and by the way, you're doing it, so keep doing it.
Love that.
Then inwardly, be self-controlled.
This is like emotionally intelligent, that you know yourself, that you know what is good for you or not. I know if I were to start kissing Susie, it would definitely go farther. There was some self-control that I needed.
Kissing is so good.
So I had to pull myself back from that.
Yep, that's right. So 1 Thessalonians
But I've
4.
caught up.
Yeah, you have. So it is God's will that you should be holy. So stay away from sexual sin. Each of you should learn to control his or her own body and live in holiness and honor, not in lustful passion like the pagans who do not know God and his ways. That's again out of the control of the world, but under the control of the Spirit and being in control of our own body. That's a tough one to live out, but this is our goal.
And then there's the character tree. And I love when Duzie teaches us because we're getting to a place of character. And within the character, that's the boundaries that we hold on to. But there's a whole process to get to there.
Yeah, so when we have our thoughts, this is more of the inward self-control space. Thoughts, feelings, attitudes, those generally are more internal. This is like where we have to control ourselves because there will be fruit from those things that end up being our words, actions, habits, character, who we are, and who we respond to. And I'm just wondering, when we're thinking about boundaries, what would you say are the boundaries that you're mostly focusing on? This is a moment for a quiz. Would it be boundaries that would have to do with your body, things that you physically do?
Body boundary.
Would it be boundaries with your mind, the way you're thinking and feeling, like we're talking here in this character tree, more deeper down? Or would it be a spiritual boundary, like trying to be in touch with God and have the right foundations? How is it for you?
Take a moment and answer that for yourself.
Body, mind, or spirit boundaries. So this might not be super clear at the moment.
The mind is winning by far.
Yeah, the mind was out there first.
Oh, someone just lost their mind. We just went to the body.
It is really moving like a heartbeat.
It is.
We're currently at mind 54, body 27, and spirit 15, but it's changing right now. It started out with 100% mind for a very long time, and now it's changing a little bit.
That's great.
So
I love the fact we can't see who's doing it, but it's moving on.
This is what you said. Body 25, mind 62, and spirit 12. Yeah, thank you for taking that poll.
That's great.
Because,
So definitely mind. Mind is a big thing. And so as we're moving this, it's the thoughts that we need to start with, moving up into
Lynn
character.
wants to know, where's the all three option? Yeah, most of us, that's the reality.
It's right there in the chat.
Which one's leading there?
You always can put whatever you really want to say in the chat.
Yeah, and Matt says right now, many of our governments are having a say in our physical boundaries. That's right. Yep. That's right. So our bodies are having to do what's going on.
So let's look at temptation for a moment, because as we're moving towards this desire,
inward control,
there is this problem inside of us. There is our struggle, and this, you never see this on Facebook, but our struggle isn't against flesh and blood. It isn't against that person who disagrees with us. There are spiritual realities that bring temptation into our life. And I love this verse that talks about temptation comes from our own desires. They drag us away. They give birth to sinful actions, which gives birth to death. And here we are so focused on life, not death. But if we don't have those boundaries, we fall into temptation. It will lead us to death.
And part of the Fully Alive Revolution, which we're gaining momentum. You guys here in Duzie Live are a part of that. We're going towards life. We're going towards that sunset, that sunrise on the path that's pleasing to God. And here's another verse from 1 Corinthians 10:13. I love this one. This encourages me so much. God is faithful. You will never have a temptation that God does not provide a way out. You saw on our little picture that you drew, there's an exit. Well, if we're going towards temptation or something that would look like death, God will always give a way out. He will never put us in a situation where we get stuck and we can only be tempted and go for the death versus the life side. I love that.
You're not saying we'll never get stuck. We're saying he never leads into the stuck.
He will never make it be that we're stuck. He always gives us a way out.
We just have to be listening.
That's right. We have to tap into that space that helps us. Did I say that unclearly?
No,
or
I just wanted
to clarify. Yeah.
And last area is here from Philippians. Fix your thoughts on what is true. Now, when I look at this verse, this is like the fence line of the boundary. On the back of my property, there's a fence line. the fence is held up by posts. And right here are the posts. What is true? What is honorable? What is right? What is pure? What is lovely? What is admirable? Think about those things. Think about the things that are excellent and worthy. We need to build our boundary on these kinds of things.
Yeah, so we've been talking about that the last 2 weeks, but we didn't want to leave that there. Now, here's what studies are saying. Guys and girls are different. All guys are not like this, and all girls are like this. But generally, this is the order of where the potential temptations or the attraction really it takes place. Tell us about the guys.
So for me, and this is very true for me, it starts off with the eyes. I see. And this is why when I first saw Susie, I see, but then you want to go into I touch. I touch, and then it gets into I risk. And for me, I think it's a little more of I'm curious at that point. But there's definitely, it doesn't just start off with risk or curiosity. It starts with what is the I see? What can I touch? What can I risk?
Yeah, and Rahel earlier was saying cultural boundaries when she was on the ship and she was cleaning, and there was a guy who touched her and said, "Thank you for cleaning." And she about went crazy because that was so not her culture. She wasn't ready for that. That was way across her boundary line. So thank you for sharing that. And yet that is just the way, the order of the guys. Well, girls, and this is really true for me, I have feelings. The emotions are very, very powerful for me as a woman. And that leads to intimacy. We talked about that last week quite a bit. Intimacy. I am known. I am cared for. I am loved. We spend time talk, and that's how we get close. So we have feelings, the intimacy happens, and then touch comes after that. The touch has so much more meaning if there's that connection and that oxytocin released in the girl's body. So I don't know how this lands with you. We'd love to hear your response to what you think the guys and the order of how it moves in the girls and the order of how it moves as well.
So my comment, which I made, was I think this is an order for me, but instead of risk, it might be more curiosity.
Yeah. And
anyone wants to put it down there?
Yeah, this is for sure is me. How is it for you? We're going to carry on, but we would love for you to put in the chat and we can have discussions about this as well.
I love flying kites. I would go out today and buy a kite if there was a good kite store in the area, because I love how it's up there and it's totally free and yet it's on a line. And that's the image I see with this under control. A kite that is really a healthy kite has a strong string. There's someone holding on. There's that lifeline. That's under control. But at the same time, it's not laying on the ground. It's not caught in a tree. It's up there where it can fly. It's out of control and under control at the same time.
All right. So jumping back, thanks for that. We want to be under control of the spirit and out of control. Jumping back, here's a few responses. Lynn said, I think the one for the girls is definitely true for me. And then Matt says, could you explain the risk curiosity a bit more, Dan?
Yeah. For me, and a lot of guys that I've talked with and coached and done some counseling with, there is this progression maybe. It's the law of diminishing returns is, I think, what it's officially called. But it starts off with the great pleasure in seeing. But then from there is this need to go a little bit farther, and that would be the great pleasure from touch. So it draws you a little bit close. But then touch is not always enough, and so it moves people into this risky area. Let's do something in the relationship that takes us past some normal boundaries. And for some people, it's like, let's really show how we're committed together. You see this both with guys with girls.
Do you love me? Then let's do this. Yeah.
But you also see this in deeper relationships that I'm not sure about the touch, but you see guys when they're together, there is this movement towards high risk, and there's a bonding that takes place in those risky. Let's see if we can do this and not get caught. So I think it's similar to that. I think we can go a lot farther into this. For me, the curiosity with Susie was not. I like taking risks, but I'm very calculated risk. So for me, in my mind, it was more of curiosity. And so that would easily draw me past some of my limits because I have a powerful imagination. And that's where, for me,
True.
that's where I really had to guard my mind.
Yeah, and Elaine speaks from the girl side and for her personal space. She says, I'm learning and realizing that mental boundaries are extremely important during this season. Yeah, so she's engaged and in relationship, at least for me, because there is so much and many options about the season and world events. There are so many sensory overloads that are happening. I'm having to make boundaries for myself to pace my interaction with it all. And
So
that's
true.
such a wise thing to do. And Lara says the same. That's very true, Elaine. And she said, I related with the feelings and touch thing with the girls for sure. And the feelings and the intimacy and fantasy for a lot of girls, I didn't get my imagination developed until later in life when Dan actually taught me how to imagine better. He's still training me in that because I'm really very practical and I'm very present oriented and I'm not so future oriented. But these feelings and fantasy and intimacy and romantic movies and romantic novels can, for some girls, especially who I've talked to, take the feelings and the intimacy so deep that farther than they actually should take it being a single girl or even in relationships. So I think having these inward self-controlled boundaries like we're talking about here is so important for both guys and girls.
Because you have to be really careful. We'll get into this a little bit more, but self-talk, those things go deep into your brain and they release chemicals that make you feel that really is true. And so some of those things that we speak out or that we imagine, we create the chemicals in our brain to say we actually did that and our body responds. So we have to really guard our mind.
Yep. So what's going on internally is very important. So stay out of control and under control. And Lynn sings this song. I heard it. Let's go fly a kite
up to the highest.
Sing it, baby.
Mary Poppins, take us there.
Yeah. So being inwardly in self-control, just here's a question to put out there. Maybe you can answer it in the chat or just for us to ponder on and think. What is one thing God is saying to you about self-control and you when we're thinking about boundaries?
And this is so important, I believe, especially now because so many people who claim to be Jesus followers are all about other control, controlling others.
Yep.
And that's not what Jesus is talking about. This is what is it God's leading us to control ourselves with. I love the fruit of the Spirit because it starts off with love, which is totally about others, but it ends with self-control, which is totally about ourselves. And there's this bookend going on between. And so that we need to really look at self-control.
Yeah. So Elaine says, yes, great explanation, Susie. Yes. Once I was in a serious relationship and even a couple relationships I was in before the Lord blessed me with Rian, her now fiance. I had to learn to retranslate the movie version of romance and love to the present day-to-day relationship. Thank you so much.
I love translation.
And then got a question here from Jess. Can you guys clarify the intimacy? Because touch is intimate and feelings as well on a level. So what perspective are we using to look at intimacy? Great question, Madam Brown. Love that. Intimacy. So when we're talking about emotions and intimacy in that particular space, talking about knowing and being known. And you can have a high level of intimacy even without touch. And for many of us, the touch takes it even deeper. But the knowing each other and being known and really sharing life and space and caring so deeply about one another can be very intimate even without the physical. And then many times when we talk about intimacy, we talk about physically being together with somebody. And that is part of it. But the intimacy, particularly in what we were talking about in that progression, is the being known and knowing.
It also is that point in the relationship where you drop your guard and you almost step out of a safe place because you have such trust in the other person. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it can be dangerous if someone is manipulating you into that. They know they're heading towards that. You drop your guard. That's where a lot of, especially girls, get really hurt emotionally and physically, because the intimacy says, I trust you, I lower my guard, and then I'm hurt.
The boundaries are much more wide open.
But I mean, it's a God-given thing. That's the way it should work in a perfect world, but yet we have to have boundaries up to make sure those things don't come down until we're in that committed relationship.
Yeah, so one of the things is we're afraid of commitment, but we want and need the intimacy, and we need the touch, and we need the love, and the curiosity, and the risk, and all these things we are talking about. And yet, if we don't have the proper boundaries, we don't have the commitment level to go with that depth of intimacy, then once you're married, the boundaries are very, very different. That's the way God made it to be. I grew up, and many people we've talked to grew up in a Christian environment that said, no, sex is wrong, sex is bad, don't go anywhere near it. If anybody says the word, run. My brother and I would laugh. We'd be in the car, and he'd turn up the music really high, and he'd go, sex, 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 because it was like the thing that you couldn't say. And so when we had a moment, he was like, there, I got it out. I said it. Because it was like such a forbidden thing, and yet God made it, and it is supposed to be in a committed married relationship.
And this is why I think we also have to have very strong boundaries. And even when we talk about when a relationship is growing, there's sometimes that need to think, well, I have to tell them everything about all my past relationships, all my sexual problems, all my sexual fantasies, and they go on and on. They've just dropped the whole wall. They get really, really intimate very, very quickly, as if that's going to glue it together. Oftentimes that actually scares people away, but there's a time and a place.
Or brings the curiosity to do more.
There's guys that always come, I just told her everything I've ever done. And how long have you known her? I've known her 2 weeks. I just want to be totally honest. And I'm thinking, you are so stupid, because you have just become intimate. You've allowed her to be intimate, and you have not earned that right. And so we have to really be careful that, there is a time to be totally honest, but a lot of people drop that intimacy barrier way too quick, and it actually propels them to go farther than what was actually there before.
Yeah. Wow. But I think we're already into the next section, so let's jump there. You can have excellent boundaries in your relationships by focusing in 3 directions. We talked about up, being pleasing to God, in, being self-controlled, and out, relationships with others. So, just before we get into that, just a few comments. Dale says, true, Dan, that's why court testimony is so difficult. Our memories and our experiences grow and change within our minds and memories.
I mean, I'll just tell you, it's something that's what we use in magic all the time. I can show you something and I can explain it to you. And as I'm explaining it to you, I can change your memory of what I actually have in my hand. It's so easy to twist those things.
Deception. Yeah. So Tiffany says emotional connection, intimacy can be sneaky strongholds that make leaving unhealthy relationships so hard, sometimes harder than physical relationships.
Very true.
And it's true. So we have to not only guard our physical, which we're taught to do, but the emotional is so much more difficult because we don't see it. And we're not always sure what's going on in that space. So,
but there has to be a balance, especially we do a lot of counseling with couples when they get married. And if you've been a good little girl, let's say, and you grew up in a good little church where all the things were boundaries, even in that relationship, that sexual relationship in a marriage, it takes a long time, even at that point, for some people to drop their guard because they've been so convinced that everything is wrong. So there's this balance of knowing there's a time and place for everything in a season, when to keep the boundary up, and then when to allow others to step into your boundary space.
Yeah, so Rahel's got a great question here. How can you turn on the sex after marriage when you had to shut it off all the time? Was that not difficult to change rhythms? And maybe I'm going to let you answer it because you had such a great example in your mom and dad, for example, and that was like a helpful thing to you.
Yeah.
You want to answer that?
Well, I'll give you the basic first. The basic is if you go to the bathroom in your house, there's no faucet running. And you then turn it on and the faucet starts. It isn't like the old pumps where you have to prime it. It's there. It's a God-given thing. But I actually believe that one of the greatest things for a sex life, a great sex life, is self-control. Those people that are not self-controlled before have a very difficult time with sexuality afterwards, because they put so much into their minds, so much action, so much video, all the rest, that they imagine something that's different. They don't build their own sexual house. And so for me, it is this, I learned sex from Susie.
And I learned from Dan.
She
we learned
showed me
together.
things. It was like, this is how you kiss. This is how you touch. This is what feels good. And it was like, oh, really? I mean, to me, and I think there is this sex at the beginning, the honey. I don't know of too many people that I've talked to who said, oh, the honeymoon was absolutely incredible. No, it was
those who were virgins when they went into their marriage,
because it was very strange, but they learn from each other
together. Yeah.
And so I don't think it's so much of how do you turn on your own sexuality in a committed marriage relationship. It is about turning on each other's sexual desires, and it has to do with so many different areas.
Intimacy, yeah.
And I think I love sitting down and talking to young married couples about sexuality, because it's something that they sometimes don't even talk about. And this is where the turn on comes from each other, talking and walking through. And there are tears and there is laughter, but it is a process that it doesn't just, the water turns on slowly, but there is momentum in that direction.
Yeah. And Rahel, thank you
Maybe
so much.
Maybe we'll do another one on that sometime.
On sexuality. Yeah. So it's a great question, because back in the day, before we had chats with people about this, we would say, before marriage, sex is wrong, wrong, wrong. And then we started dealing with Christians post-marriage who are struggling with sexuality because of that very thing you're asking about. It was shut off, it was sealed, it was glued, there was no opportunity. And they felt guilty for being involved with sexuality because they had been told their whole life it's wrong, wrong, wrong. And so we change it, and we're trying to be as open as people are willing to listen and be honest about. Sexuality is from God, and sex and intimacy and being together is from God, but it needs to be in the right place. So wait for it. It's definitely worth it, but wait for it.
If you're having premarital counseling with us, we're going to be talking about sex a lot, because it's something you have to begin to talk about, because it's so powerful and it's so good in the right place. It's just like,
right time.
I hear this all the time. It's like a fireplace. If a fireplace is wonderful, a fire in your house is wonderful, as long as the log is burning in the fireplace.
Yeah.
You don't want to burn it on your couch. And so there is this process of talking about it, laughing about it, wondering, asking the stupid questions, which is actually going to make the sex life so much better.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for asking that. And any question is good. You can ask us. Jess says, thank you guys for clearing it up, the intimacy part of it. I've experienced that, and it's easy to run from touch and feelings, but that intimacy boundary, as someone who's very open and caring, isn't that easy to move away or guard myself from. Yeah.
Very important.
And Laura says, yes, me too. It's a beautiful and powerful realization. And you're welcome, Laura, for the explanation. Matt says, good question, Rahel. I think it's one of the things that's so hard, but also we get mistaken. We're all sexual beings, true, but living that out in a way that glorifies God looks different for different people at different stages.
Yep.
For example, Jesus was single and totally honored God, but he was also fully man, and so he must have been a sexual being too. We don't know too much about Jesus as a sexual being, but you're right, Matt. So when we're thinking about this, our boundaries, being pleasing to God and self-control, then we can move into, in proper perspective, to the relationship with others.
A few more verses. Keep going.
1 Thessalonians says, no one should wrong or take advantage of a brother or sister. And that's the part that's so important, that we take care of each other's hearts. We take care of each other's bodies. We take care of having, for example, one of the situations with Dan and I, things that were so normal and easy to me made him, like in a car driving, put the gas pedal all the way to the floor. And I didn't realize that was what was happening to him before we were married. And so he would say to me, Susie, you can't do that. And I'd be like, why not? Let's talk about it. So communication. And he would explain to me in a safe enough way without totally getting too intimate. He would just say, you make me want to have more than my boundaries will allow me to have when you do that, when you say that, when you look at me like that. And so we found that if we would look into each other's eyes like this, woo, it still works like that. Okay, I forgot what I was going to say. Take over. No. It just worked right there.
Okay, we're done with Duzie Live. Thanks for coming. It's just, you have to know yourself. You have to know your partner. You have to know that relationship. The whole idea is you have to build those boundaries. But then as intimacy grows, when it's earned a right to be heard, the boundaries grow. You allow people to come into it. And we want to look at the boundaries from the point of body, mind, and the spirit.
All right, so let's take it back to...
take it back now.
Take it back now, y'all. Yeah. Okay, let's see if we missed any chats. Great.
Oh, I just want to speak to Jess. You're saying the thing about, I would love to pick Jesus' brain on that. Then do it.
Do it. Ask him.
There are a lot of times I do this. I will have an imaginary conversation with Jesus. I will sit down in a chair and we'll talk about these things. And he speaks into my imagination. There are things he speaks to me, and it's like, oh, wow. I know it's not coming from me because I had never had that thought before. But he speaks through our imagination. So sometimes when we're like, I wish I could just pick Jesus' brain, do it. Just go outside, sit in a chair where no one else thinks you're a freak, and just have a conversation. You'll be incredible what God actually speaks into your imagination that moves you forward.
All right, so Matt's got one. As the good book says, and this is Song of Solomon 2:7. So got to pull out Song of Solomon.
Yes.
As the good book says, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or the does of the field, that you not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. And this is exactly, you want to wait. You want to wait until the commitment, until the right time and space. And then whatever is agreed between you two that's not damaging yourself or somebody else, or against the law, right? Probably. Then those things are okay. But in those moments, you can stir and awaken love, but not until then.
I think that's why the commitment of a marriage is so important. What's the difference between Friday when you're not married and Saturday when you are married? It's commitment. It is, you are legally making a commitment that I am going to take care of this person. You are legally making a covenant before God that I am in a relationship. So you have made the vow in front of people that we are now expanding these borders to include each other. This is why marriage is so important.
Yes.
And I think you can totally have commitment outside of it, but there is another step when you actually take that vow before God and in front of your friends. This is where we're going. Wow. The intimacy then begins to open up much more, I believe.
Yeah. So Elaine says, love the love between you both. We love it too. We're very blessed. 34 years. Whoop, whoop. Okay, so Matt's got a song going. 2 hops this time. Freeze. Everybody clap your hands. Picked an easier read version. No, that's okay. Contemporary English version. Oh, he's got a new version here. Young women of Jerusalem, promise me by the power of deer and gazelles never to awaken love before it's ready. I like that, Matt.
Yep. Let her sleep.
Don't awaken. So let's talk about the body, and we really want to hear what you think here in the chat. Body, let's think about it. How can we protect one another?
Just understand as well, we are not telling you what the body, mind, and spirit limits are.
No.
There's no list here. We believe the Holy Spirit is powerful enough to speak to you if you're listening. But we just want you to know that you can have some very strong limits and boundaries in these areas. And
we just want to spark conversation, discussion, and help each other. You know, we've learned so much from each other. Guys meet girls and girls meet guys, getting new perspectives that help us form and shape who we are. So let's think about going out and dating. And maybe a good question can be, what do you want out of it? Like, how safe can I keep Dan? How safe can I keep myself and still have a very enjoyable time? Are we going for friendships? Are we going to see how far you can get with that guy or girl? And the next question is very similar to it. What are your purity limits? So many people ask us in the guy-girl talk or in the relationship questions, like, how far can I go? And what do we say?
Well, I say a lot of things. Which one do you want me
How
to
far? Well, the limits. Like, do we go over the edge or just close to the edge?
I think
Whatever
that's the
you want
wrong
to say
question.
in this moment.
I thought there was something specific.
No.
I always usually say, well, why is the question how far can you go? How about how pure can I be? Or if you're at the Grand Canyon, you never say, how close can I get to the edge without falling over? That would be stupid. You actually, where is the safe place? Where is the right place to stand? And so I believe that's what needs to come into these boundaries.
Yeah. So when we're thinking about healthy friendships, don't forget about our upward God and our self-control, the purity, what it looks like for us individually, friendship and fun.
So then there's the mind, and you choose to control your own body. Your mind is powerful.
Yeah.
There's chemicals making memories right now.
Yeah.
And if I did something really stupid or said something, you might never forget it. That's how powerful the brain is. This is why we need boundaries. You need to guard your mind, checklist your thought, check them, control your feelings.
Check your first
and
thoughts.
there are people that are like, oh, I can't be in my control of my feelings. You're not a dog. Okay, you're not a dog. God has given you the abilities. My dog is a dog. He does not control his feelings nor his bladder very well at the moment. We are human. We're in the image of God. We can't. He's given us a mind to control our feelings. We need to be in touch with them. Some of us, we're distant from our feelings. We need to step back into those things. But this doesn't mean control your feelings, like never cry, never. No, be in touch with them as well.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, I'm a man, so I just have to attack women. No, you need to wrench that down a little bit, because you need to have a lot of control in your mind.
Yeah, so let's think about some of these issues. Last week, some of you were asking, like, what about flirting? Well, what is the purpose of flirting for you? What about crushes, for example, when you see that guy and you're like, oh, that guy or that girl, and it's like, oh, I love them, I want them, I would love to do this and that with them. If we take it too far in our mind, beyond what the good boundaries for ourselves personally, and beyond the good boundaries for them who you're even thinking about. These are things that we need to think about. Flirting. It's okay to flirt, but what are you doing? How are we taking care of the heart of the other?
I think flirting is okay when it's understood that you're flirting. But when you're flirting and you're just playing a game and the other person doesn't realize, I think that becomes very dangerous, because then you're messing with somebody's heart.
Yeah.
And so there's
how do you
line
protect that heart in the midst of flirting and having fun? And then what about lust? Tell us about lust.
I mean, lust is one of those things that the Bible definitely is against. I'm not sure what is curiosity and what is lust. For me, it's always an interesting study for me to look at what really is it. But I know that lust creates in me a chemical memory as if I actually did something. My mind and my body, when I lust, has the same response that is that if I actually did it. And so I think that's incredibly dangerous to actually create memories of something I did that didn't happen. I'm lying to myself, and I'm setting a pattern that is just not. It's not true. And if we're looking at what is true and right and pure, lust is definitely going to take us away from that. So we really have to pull back and think, well, what is really true?
Yeah, we talked a little bit already about fantasy. Jess says, yes, Matt, that verse, it just confirms that we do have control. And Matt says, yes, it's a bit like the fire analogy too. And the fire starts to spark. We have the ability to either stir it up or to control it. But we all know what happens when a fire is stirred up beyond control.
So
true. And Jess says, how far away can I stand that will still allow me to see the view? Or when we're thinking of fire, I love to be really close to the fire. I also love to take risks. So how far can I be to be warm and not be in a dangerous space? And I think that's really two great analogies. Jess says, yeah, it gets a mind of its own and then burns everything down. Whoops. No, avoid the whoops.
Yeah.
I like that. Lynn said,
take it back.
I think you, Dan, take it back now, y'all. Lynn says, I think you, Dan, once said as well a few MTOs back, don't play with the boy's heart. That never left me.
It's true.
Yep. And guys, don't play with the girls' hearts. Yeah, we want to protect each other's hearts.
And I would see this a lot, incredibly on the ship. We had SP policies. I mean, it was like go to jail cards were there all the time. And yet I would sit in amazement and watch these guys play with girls' hearts or girls play with guys' hearts. And it was like, that is so sad because most of the time when you're playing with someone's heart, you know you're playing with someone's heart. And it's not a game.
Yeah, and it's very hurtful. You know, you're trying to catch something, but what happens if you don't catch something or it's not the time? Don't awaken the love.
Guard your heart.
We got that Solomon one. Okay, and let's hop over to the spirit. We've actually talked about this quite a bit.
Because we're over an hour, so we'll finish up with this and then we'll...
And just a reminder, if any of you need to leave, will you mind putting your takeaway, what you have learned so far, what stood out to you? We'd love to have that in the chat. But be pleasing to God. Remember that. And the other bit of it, lived like you're loved. Sometimes when we go into a relationship or we're going for a relationship and we are not loved by God, then we look for love. My dad used to say, don't go looking for love in all kinds of strange places. You can find it right here with me. And I think God says that to us as well. God has that amazing, unconditional, perfect love for you. So if we have that as our basis and we're pleasing to God, and then we go into relationship as a loved person, not trying to have that other person fill all of our voids emotionally, spiritually, it'll make such a difference.
But I just go back to the slide 1 second.
Sure.
I just think you need to make sure that when you're being pleasing to God, it is to God. We all live in Christian bubbles. We live in Christian cultures that sometimes those things that we are pleasing is just to make that culture happy with us.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the best. It's we need to have that relationship with God because God works as us as individuals, where the religious culture of our day, as in every other day, is there to steal, kill, and destroy in many ways. It's there to control. Yeah. And so we need to make sure we're really pleasing God and listening to his spirit rather than a spirit of a culture that it's going to be different in the next country. It's going to be different in the next generation. So really tune your ear to God.
Yeah, so thanks. Rahel says in the chat, a professional psychotherapist once said in an interview that the feeling you have is not something you can control. You can only control your actions. And a few weeks ago in Duzie Live, we were talking about feelings and a lot about our emotions and stress. And what we came up with is feelings are indicators. So when we have feelings, yes, you need to be present with those and try to understand them better. But they are indicators that something's going on. Those aren't right or wrong. What we do with them, and this is what Rahel is just saying as well, it's your actions that you can control, usually. And that's why the self-control and the controlling your actions towards other people is really important. And Lynn says, I try to be very cautious with it for that very reason. And Rahel talks about if someone makes you angry, you are angry. But if you beat or shout or go for a walk, those are all decisions and choices you can make with that. So yeah, thank you, Rahel.
So it goes back to what I said before. You need to control your feelings, but it's not so much deny that they exist, but don't let them control you. Don't let them lead you into an action that you'd regret.
Yeah, that's right. So here's a question for us when we're thinking about out and taking care of one another. And I think this is where Michaela asked us early on. She said, who has showed you honor or respect? Many times when we're respected or we're honored by somebody, then it makes such a difference. At MTO, our Camp for Missionary Teenagers, we have something called Ladies and Gentlemen Night, where we help one another learn how to take care and care for one another. And, it's a bit of as formal as it can get. And a number of the girls have said, actually, that honor or that respect that was given to me in that ladies and gentlemen evening set a standard for me. And I didn't have a boyfriend for a long time because nobody showed me that level of honor or respect. And when we are honored and respect, it makes a difference for us. And it allows us to honor or respect or choose as well.
Yeah. So what is one way you can honor someone today? I think we live in a time that it's so easy to dishonor. It's so easy to disrespect because I know more than you, or I have the facts and you have the fake news, or you have a whatever. How do we, though, within these relationships, set up boundaries that we're always thinking it's not about being the most right. It's about loving the most. It's about honoring. It's about esteeming. It's about thinking about what did they really feel. It's about respect. So I want you just to think, if you would, of what is one way that you can honor or respect or value someone today.
Yeah.
This whole talk has been about us, our boundaries. But if we're going to set boundaries in the right place, it has to be centered as well on other people. And how do I show respect? And you may have a boundary that you are just, God has given you total freedom in the area, but someone else hasn't. Well, our job is not to go and rip down their fence because we have freedom. Our job is to show honor and respect to them, even if they are so conservative or so liberal or whatever the case. We need to show respect.
And Matt says, I love the emphasis on showing honor here. So powerful. It is true. We can learn from our Asian and our South American brothers and sisters on honoring one another. They're so good at it. And the final verse here from 1 Thessalonians 4 is, for God did not call us to be impure, but to live a holy life. So we started out at the very beginning passage with, be holy as you're already doing. Be pleasing to God as you're already doing. And this is the other end of the sandwich, and live a holy life. Love that. Yeah, so you can have excellent boundaries in your relationships by focusing in three directions. Up, be pleasing to God. In, be self-controlled. And out, in relationship with others. This has been our relationship boundaries. And we have really enjoyed having you here. It's a good time to go into our backstage. Man, you're showing the backstage longer than me. I got the train.
I was pulling the curtain.
Wow. Yeah, so let's continue on, chat. What questions, comments, emotional outbursts, what would you like to hear more of?
Because we're going to go on next week and look at a part 2 of this where we really dive into the questions and look specifically at issues. We felt we need to build the foundation of God and us before we get into the whole, it's just about them. But we sort of built that, but we want to keep going to help you. Hopefully by the time we're done, you will say, here are my values that support my my boundaries, and here are the rhythms that are going to make sure it stands.
So please share your takeaway. What has stood out to you so far in this time together? Something that was said, something that was chatted about, something that you heard even for yourself. We'd love to hear it because it makes a difference for us as a community.
And we know that a lot of you are processors, and when we're done, and you'll be like 4 hours from now, and you go, oh, I wish I would have. Write to us.
Or
send us a message, because those are the things we get all week long. We get responses.
We love that.
Duzie Live, and that helps us prepare more for the next week.
Yep, and one of the places you can do that is the Fully Alive Revolution. And
private message us.
You can private message us, and I just want to share that if you are not already there, you can join the movement. And this is fully alive people doing life together in community with other fully alive people. So that's the Fully Alive Revolution. We want to keep the Duzie live chat coming. We're trying to figure out, we'd love to know what you think about this, but some of you say, oh, we need a couple days to think about it, and then we'd love to have a comeback. So one of the things we're thinking of is having some Duzie live, having a live Facebook, or like a Facebook Live within the Fully Alive Revolution, where it's a question and answer time.
So like we'd do this on Tuesday, and let's say Friday night or something, we would have a live session of just dialogue.
Yep, and you guys continue to give your response and your thoughts. So let us know either here or just personal message to us. What do you think about that idea? Would that be helpful for you? We'd love to hear that. Lynn says, you may or may not receive a message from me in a few hours then. Good. Love it. Anytime, day or night, we'll check. We usually check our messages in the day, but you know, it'll be there when we get there. Matt says, I think that's my takeaway right there. I need to take a bit more time thinking about my values to help be the foundation for these boundaries. I think I'm often very quick to start rhythms, but I'm not always clear on my values first.
Yeah. This is what I believe.
Nice.
The foundation. We're moving towards a platform, actually a membership group of people that will have a paid membership to be part of Fully Alive Revolution. And in everything we do, we're gonna help people figure out. So if this is the purpose of my life, what's the value, and then what's the rhythm? Yeah. And just helping people within a community. Yeah, I have this. But what's the value? What's the rhythm? Because we were going to look at, okay, let's teach rhythm. Like in our course, if any of you took Relaunch Your Life, we had a whole section on values, whole section on rhythms. But then we realized that those two actually are a support.
What we believe in the actions we take. Yep. Yeah. They're like, whoo.
That's good, man.
Elaine says, the boundaries aren't just for me. They are also for giving honor and support to those around me. The up, in, and out was so helpful to be reminded of as well. Yeah, thank you, Elaine. That's right. We have to have boundaries that are encompassing, boundaries that are good, not just for me, but also for the others that I'm with. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, some of us are living in community in the midst of a relationship. And Elaine, that would speak to that as well. While we're in community having a relationship, and Dan was really good he was obnoxiously good about this. I would be like, can we hold hands, or can you put your arm around me, or something? He was like, well, yeah, I would love to. And I really want to. Yeah, I really want to. But that would make it awkward for everybody else in the room. And I don't want to put them out. He was always thinking of other people. I'm like, stop thinking of them. Think of me. And of course he was. I found that out later, but of course he was. But he was also trying to honor the people in our community as well. So good job, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
He still always thinks about everything. He gets the whole big picture. That's one of his superpower gifts. Being strategic in the big spaces.
Other than my cloak of invisibility.
That's your other superpower? Sometimes I still see you.
Sometimes she doesn't see me at all.
Depends on how deep my chat is, right? Laura says, about boundaries in my own mind and with relationships would be something I would like to know more. Oh, that's good.
Good.
And Yoaz, my takeaway, the pure and amazing love from God is the foundation on which to build a life-giving relationship.
It's good.
Amen.
It's good. Preach it.
Yeah. And Rahel says, do you get and read emails you get when I click reply on one of the invitations per email? Yes. Yep. If you just click reply to any of the invitations that comes to us, connect@duzie.com. Yep.
Well, most of them do. We're finding recently there's several things that we don't know why, but it ended up in a junk bin. And so we keep checking that. So sorry if they haven't, but we think we're answering everything.
Okay, and Michaela says, love the live chat. For your information, the Facebook page has rooms to connect and chat further. And thank you. Michaela is exploring that with some of her people as well. So if you want to be in, I think it's up to 8 people in a room, so you can have a chat with a small group of people together as well. So Laura needs more time to think about. Jess says, that my boundaries not only honor myself, but the people around me. If I cannot control myself, how can I live in community?
Good awareness.
Preach, girl. And Lynn says, my takeaway, being in control of one's mind is very important, as it has a great impact on how we act and how we think. And it's okay to accept that sex isn't always and exclusively bad. And oh yeah, I need to process that a bit. That's good. That's good. You process away. Cyril says, a takeaway for me is how important boundaries in all areas are and how important honoring others is.
So true.
Yes, Cyril, that's awesome. Matt says, Michaela, you're the Facebook chat room pioneer guru. Queen. Oh, the crown goes on. Over to Michaela.
It's good. Great.
Yeah. At Matt, except no one is joining me. Somebody please join Michaela in the group room. She needs to be the queen guru. Oh, you get the crown.
But if you find a room sometime and no one's there, I love being in rooms by myself. So just tell me where that's at.
Then if someone's there and you go there by yourself, you won't be by yourself.
Right,
You'll be there with someone else.
Yeah. So tell me and then clear the space. I'm just joking.
Is this your man cave space?
I like man caves.
Yeah. This has been an amazing Duzie Live. Don't forget that your life is a remarkable story, an adventure that only you can create.
We live to motivate and equip you to live fully alive.
Today in this Duzie Live, we were talking all about relationship boundaries as a part of our unique relationship series. So may you live fully alive in that space.
As you love your life, your world, and your God. My name is Dan.
And my name is Susie, and together we're a Duzie.
Live fully.
And love fully.
And by the way, this week we're taking a road trip across America. Please be praying for us. And we don't know where this is going to come live from next Tuesday. Probably somewhere around Yellowstone National Park.
We'll see how far we get.
We have no idea. But it will come out. We're going to be looking for a place to broadcast live from. But thank you for joining us for this time.
And we're going to try for next week to have a few people to interview and take this boundaries, relationships a little bit further. So thanks once again for joining us, and keep chatting here for a little while, even after we go off live, or to us personally. We so appreciate you coming and joining us. Those of you who are live here, and those of you who are watching by replay. God bless you. Have a great day. And relationship
those who were dead here? I mean, those who were alive here?
No, they were definitely alive.
They were definitely alive. I love the conversation.
Okay, so we're going to take it back now, y'all.
Oh, yeah.
Too hot. And fully alive.
I think I have it here.
Yeah.
Somewhere I have it.